Hello and welcome to our first Erickson live stream in June. Today we are talking about relationships. So if you think coaching can be complicated and can be okay, I'm hearing myself. There we go. Sorry. So if you think coaching one person can have many layers and can be complex and can be ever changing and can be like trying to grab a fistful of water sometimes, just wait until you get initiated into the wonder that is relationship coaching. So stay tuned for that today on Erickson Live. So the guest we have today is none other than Richard Hyams. Richard is the faculty lead of Erickson Coaching International. So he's my boss, if you want to put it more simply, more bluntly. And he's also a relationship enhancement coach. And we'll check in with him on what that means. And as I wrote in the introduction, Richard today will, among other things, tell us about what happens when we stop trying to fix everything that is wrong in a relationship, and instead, if we begin to create the future that we want together. So Richard, very warm welcome. Glad to have you for the first time on the stream.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Topic that is still fascinating to me, still interesting, still developing.
Yeah. So what might people need to know about you that I haven't mentioned off the top there, just before we get started?
Uh, okay, well, I've been with Ericsson since, as a learner, I started in 1998, so it's a while. And as a facilitator and a coach, I started part-time in 2001, no, 2002, after I graduated, and started both at the same time, pretty much facilitating and coaching. And I've been with Ericsson ever since, and still loving it, and still finding the work relevant. Um, so what else would be? So that's a little bit of historical background for me. Um, uh, I think I would rather talk on the level of my passion and values around the whole thing. So
Absolutely.
yeah, so the whole tipping point for me in my journey professionally and personally started when I was diving into the Ericsson world and this whole idea of solution focused. And like many people, I think when you first hear, at least with me, when you first hear solution focus, it sounds like, okay, I'm going to isolate the problem and find solutions to it. And there is a little bit of truth to that, but that's not the whole thing. What's more interesting to me and more powerful is how the problem or what we've been focusing on becomes the platform of which we are inspired to create a vision and let go of what the problem is, like a little child who no longer is interested in a toy, no longer puts any attention on that. There's something that's more interesting, more important, more valuable. And in the world of relationships, that couldn't be even more true. I think what I'd like to do is tell my own personal story that led to why I dived into relationship and relationship coaching as a topic that's fascinating to me. Would that be all right?
Yeah, that would be absolutely all right. Before you get going on that, so
Okay.
one example on instead of trying to get a child to kind of let go of the toilet paper roll that it's kind of having a lot of fun doing this too. This happened to me 15 minutes ago, literally. So just because it's so apropos. So instead of telling my son to stop doing this, because obviously it was very fascinating, I told him about how great the bath was going to be, and I told him to put his arms up because that's something that we practice to take off the shirt and that sort of thing. So I was just not trying to disincentivize him from doing what I didn't want him to do, but kind of rather putting his attention on something that's even more fun, right? And I think that like you're saying, that kind of dynamic will probably feature heavily in what we're talking about today. So
Yes, absolutely. So Uh, we have as we teach through Erickson, we have a conscious mind and we have the other mind, whatever we want to call it. I've heard it called all kinds of things. The latest version that I kind of like, it's called the energy mind, because it's energetic, right? But the deeper knowledge system, the other than conscious mind. The conscious mind is so limited; it can only focus on a limited amount of attention at a time. It was very difficult to focus on two very interesting things, or two problems even at the same time. So, there's that joke that if you have a headache and it's really throbbing, and, take a hammer and hit your thumb, because your attention will go from your headache to your thumb. Now, that's not,
Problem solved.
a good way to go about life, but this is the same with us. As humans, we are no different than the child, right? You could be in the middle of having an argument with your loved one, and then there's some kind of emergency happens in that moment, and you completely forget about the argument. You put all your attention, which again is very limited, on that new event that's happening, that whether it's negative or positive, that sort of thing. So yeah, that's a very useful what's the word, model to remember. When we're coaching people, what a powerful question is really shifting the attention from something to something else. That's what makes it powerful. It's a new perspective. It's like, my favorite metaphor of that is the flashlight in a dark room. You can be shining on the dust in the corner and put all your attention there and tell stories about it and why is it there and analyze it. Or you can put your attention on the beautiful artwork that you just purchased and haven't had a time to really appreciate, because you can't really do both at the same time.
What I'm trying to do at the same time is both pay attention to you and also pay attention to our wonderful audience that is joining us. So I don't want to neglect that relationship either. So everybody, as you are joining us here, tell us where you're from. Tell us where you're joining in from. Where is home for you, or where are you located at the moment? And maybe on top of that, what is the relationship that you want to create even more harmony in? Or what is the relationship that you want to enhance today? What do you want to learn more about as Richard lets me in on some of his trade secrets as a relationship coach here? So where are you from? What relationship is something you want to work on right now? And what are your questions for Richard? So all throughout, I will sprinkle in the questions that you ask as the audience. So feed me with those questions so I can pass them on to Richard. We want to make this as relevant to you as possible. So help us help you in that sense. All right, Richard, without further ado, please, how did you get started with your passion around this whole subject?
Well, that's a story full of lots of different pieces to it. I think I represented a lot as you could say, a demographic, a lot of people, at least some of the clients that I was receiving as well, that I was coaching, that having created a certain measure of success, at least through the eyes of the world, in my professional life and in my physical life. I was happy with my health. I was happy with my coaching practice and my facilitation and the job that I had, or the career that I had, and my home life. But I was single, and it was very confusing. This was more than 10 years ago, and it was confusing because I wasn't getting what this missing piece was, and I knew I wanted to have a relationship. I knew that, and that was clear. But what was confusing for me was why? Why do I want a relationship? Because I didn't feel broken, and I didn't feel like I was half a person looking for the other half to complete me. I felt full at the time, but I still wanted to have a relationship. And being the questioner that I had, that question stayed with me, I think maybe for 3 years. And then I had an epiphany, which was a phrase that I love to use quite often, for the joy of it, purely for the joy of it, for the fun of it. And that was a groundbreaking breakthrough for me, because I was thinking, I want to be in a relationship to grow. No, that didn't land. I want to be in a relationship because it's spiritual. I can develop myself spiritually. I want to be in a relationship to make the world a better place. No, it was none of that. Just for my own joy and the fun of it, the thrill of it, the deliciousness of it, the sweetness of it. Those moments of intimacy, but are wonderful. And when somebody says, "How was your weekend?" and for me, I just spent it with my partner and had wonderful moments of cuddling and making him laugh and these are wonderful moments, and they're not that grandiose, but they're beautiful. And that was the first breakthrough I had, just simply for the joy of it. And it's very similar to the contracting question. I knew what I wanted, I could see it, but it's the why do I want that? Why is it important? And I think it's relevant. It's a very good question to ask, because when we ask why is it important, or what's the value behind that, how does that serve you, if we move it from a place that's extrinsic and dependent on the outside world to our own internal state. And this is the wonderful thing about values, is that or values, or we call them core states as well, often at Erickson, is that they're intrinsically driven, or intrinsically, I don't like the word driven, like accessed. You can sit down alone and imagine a scene of joy and actually feel joy, even though nothing's changed in the external world. And I think this is amazing. I think what an amazing thing that humans can do. So about 12 years ago, I had that breakthrough. That was number one. And then it was, well, okay, I want a relationship with the joy of it. And I was looking at things that had to do with quantum physics and attractor fields, right? So relationships, we talk about attracting a person. And I was saying that I want to attract the right person. And that was not really the best question to ask myself. It's not about attracting the right person. It's about becoming the attractor field that is a vibrational or emotional match to that other person. And I know I'm going into woo land here, but
I was just going to say if I could translate that for a second. So let me take a stab at it. So instead of doing something in order to kind of put out the fishing rod and kind of catch the right fish, that is the right one for you, I'm hearing that you wanted to become a certain person and be a certain person that would automatically attract the person that is right for you. So going from the doing something, I know, what do I do? What's the hack? And you say nowadays kind of, what's the cheat sheet? What can I do in order to do it? Going onto the being level and saying, how do I become the person that kind of automatically attracts what is meant for me in a sense? Does that ring true for you?
Yeah, exactly. Like those of you on the call who know the logical levels, which we teach practically in every program, moving from behavior and action, that level, which is a lower level in the map, to the higher level of who am I being? Who do I want to become? That would be the kind of person that would have that other person as a match in my relationship. So if I wanted joy, which is what I decided, and I wanted happiness, and I was going through the process backwards. And this might be a little shock to some people, but that's what we do as humans. So I want to have a relationship, and not until I have a relationship will I have joy. It doesn't work. I'm going to step into joy as a way of being, even though I don't have a relationship, and the relationship will happen. And that's exactly what happened to me. I got so good at practicing what it felt like, looked like, sound like. Every day, I did this every day. It was a fun little exercise that I did with myself, practicing, imagining, as ifing what it's like, to the point where, and it's going to sound paradoxical, it didn't matter if I was going to find that person or not. It was so in my experience, in my being. And I think what happens is there's so much that happens on the unconscious level that we don't see and hear, right? Again, we're processing information on a very limited stream consciously. So the way that Richard, I'm going to talk in third person, would, talk to people, the tone of voice he would use, the choices he would make, the places he would go, was all informed by this practiced state of joy that I was expecting previously to get from a relationship in a dependent way. But I took ownership of that. So the meeting of my partner, who I'm now married to happily we'll celebrate our marriage this year, 11 years. I'm sorry, I just went there so much that I feel it.
Nice.
That person that I adore, and is still an ongoing sense of mystery and fun and playfulness and delight. He doesn't make me have those feelings. I choose him to be the object of my affection and my appreciation, which is so fabulous. Plus, not to mention the freedom that comes from that, because if we are going to be contingent upon people's behavior to make us happy, we're playing a game you can never win. I'm sorry to say. No, I'm not sorry to say. I think it's actually a good thing to say in a liberating way. I had also decided, Fabian, that before I met, his name is George, before I met George, that I did an as-if frame, as we call it, Erickson, on myself, which was, how do I want to be looking back on my life and my final days in my resting place, where I imagined a beautiful place that I would be transitioning to whatever the next realm is, happy and satisfied with my life. What do I want to declare? What do I want to claim? And it was, I want to know what it's like to love someone as deeply and intensely as possible, right? And be the best version of myself in that relationship. That's what I wanted. And that was sort of tipping point number 3 for me. And so I was practicing what it's like to have that experience, taking ownership of how I feel, and it happened. Now, one could say in a romantic, magical way, it happened in a mysterious, magical way, but I do believe that we operate, our behavior is different, our tone of voice is different, the decisions we make, I think where I met him was, I followed an intuition. It was just like, go to this place, take this course. And I had no expectation that I was going to meet anybody, but it happened. And when I did, it was not like it was in the past for me, like, oh my God, like this nervousness and this excitement. It was ease and a calm, and it was logic. It was, this is it, here it is. And he's from another country, and I don't know how it's going to happen, but it's going to work out. Right?
Amazing. Yeah. Well, first of all, congratulations on 11 years. My wife and I are coming up on 10 years, and it's amazing how it goes. On the one hand, it goes by in an instant, doesn't it? And on the other hand, you feel like there was never a before. Yeah. Like you've known them forever, and you think back to certain memories, and like, where was she? Where was he in that moment? Oh no, we didn't know each other. Like, that's crazy. Yeah. So clearly, from what you're saying, what can I do to improve my relationship doesn't seem like it's the right question, right? Like, you seem to be saying it's much more on a being level, or first of all, like, it helps to be in a certain place yourself, where there's a certain ease, where the other person can come into a picture that is not incomplete, but it's just something that they make even more whole, or they kind of make it even better, but it's already a good picture to start with. So instead of asking, what can I do to get a relationship or to make the relationship better, what would you ask instead?
Who do you want to be? That would be a person that would find themselves attracting that and having that experience. I would go up to the level of being. But I do want to step back a bit, because if this was in a coaching conversation, it may begin with the focus on unwanted. So let me say a couple of things first as background. I'm talking about, when I talk about relationships, and I talk about relationship coaching even, I talk about all relationships, not just the intimate relationship. The story I'm telling was the beginning of me examining all relationships, not just a love relationship, in a different way than I had before, where I began to liberate myself from the idea that people have to be different than they are in order for me to be happy, because that's a game you can never win. The rules are rigged for unhappiness, for sure, right? So I wanted to be a person that's liberated from that. I can't claim that every day of my life I don't experience an annoyance with someone else or a disappointment, but I look at that and I look at that as information. The emotional system gives us information, so I'm putting my attention on something that's unwanted. So back to your question. So I think it is an okay question as what do I do, right? I know where you're going with that. Is like it's shifting the attention from creating a list of new behaviors to an inner game of relationships. There's that book, Inner Game of Tennis. It's inner game of relationships. And then from that reorientation within that alignment on a feeling, on a vibrational, emotional values level, identity level, the behavior will be inspired. And that's the behavior to in my opinion, to follow, right? The brain is so incredibly amazing and so helpful. And it's designed for our well-being. And the emotions are designed to move us towards greater levels of well-being. That's what it is. It's like another sense organ. I think that we have a lot of flawed premises as humans about what the emotions are and what they're for. But when it comes to the physical body, for instance, and the very basic physical system, if you put your hand on a hot stove, you immediately release it. That physical system is assuring your physical well-being. But when it comes to emotions, it's as if we have a bad emotion and we put our hand on the hot stove metaphorically and we keep it there. And some of us keep it there so long we get developed calluses and a numbness. And we believe that that's who we are, right? We bring it to the level of our identity. I'm an angry person. And then it gets to the point where, who would I be without my anger? I need my anger. If I don't have anger, I won't care about making the world a better place or the ecology. I need that, but it's not true, right? You can be extraordinarily happy and still care about everything you care about because your values will always be inside of you. So I'm kind of going off topic, but if we're working with people, we always meet them where they're at. So that attention on the unwanted and the emotion that goes with it is useful, because that annoyance or unhappiness, that disappointment with the other person gives us the opportunity to ask, so what is it that you want that's different than that, that's other than that, that's better than that would feel good, because that will be the indicator. And then, like I said, bring the person to that highly resourceful state, that vision of the relationship that's better, and allow the inspire action to flow from that. So that's how it is a little bit different, rather than go right into action, which is our typical knee-jerk response, right? Oh, so-and-so pissed me off, I need to write them an email. No, that wouldn't be my approach, right? It would be, okay, I got this feeling going on. It doesn't feel good. I'm putting my hand on a hot stove. How can I release my hand from the hot stove? What's the valuable information that this experience is giving me about what I truly do want? What does that look like? What does that sound like? What does that feel like? Tell that new story, and then not until I feel a higher level of energy, which is an emotional state of pleasure or positivity, do I take action. Can't say I always do that, but that's what I operate by, and that's how I would coach people. That was my very long answer to the question.
Yeah, fair enough. Let's take some questions from the audience, shall we? So first of all, we have a birthday. I hesitate to say birthday girl. That always sounds so, I don't know. A birthday lady. So Lilia is watching us on her birthday. So thank you very much for joining us on your birthday. We're very, very honored. Maybe we'll sing a little bit later. So she says, I'm in a very happy relationship for many years now, including with my children, and being today is my birthday. I'm listening to Richard and acknowledging how being acceptable, or maybe accepting, of my own right to be happy and wishing the same thing for others played a crucial role in my life. Be happy and let others find their own joy.
Yeah, so, the interesting thing about happiness is it's not shortage. It's not based on shortage. When we're if you take a moment and think about your happiest time, you don't want to hoard it. You want to share it. We are better versions of ourselves when we're happy. And it sounds so obvious to say that, but it's so true. It's and easy to forget. We are better versions of ourselves. We share. We're generous. We want so much the other person to be as happy as we are. If we can make our happiness priority, then we are a better service to others. And this brings up a whole interesting set of flawed premises about that, because. And I used to be like this too, and I still go there sometimes. We have this idea that if someone else is unhappy, I don't know if people can see me, so if someone else is unhappy, I'm going to call that a lower, not hierarchical, but lower vibrational state that doesn't feel good. And you're in happiness up here, okay? And I don't mean better. I just mean in a state of higher, faster moving energy, because emotions are energy. That's now being proven by science, and we can talk about that later too. So this person up here, let's say it's you, and you've got this happiness and you're making it priority. Often the misunderstanding is, in order for me to understand this person who's in some kind of psychological, emotional pain, I have to go down to their level and join them there. Because I am ignoring them, dismissing them. I'm being uncompassionate. Is that a word? Not compassionate, because that person's in pain. No, this is an invitation. If you create your happiness and make it a strong ongoing momentum of happiness, at some point that person will be inspired to join you. Hopefully. If not, they'll go find someone else to commiserate with. And I mean, your work is done. That's just the way life, that's the game. So my two favorite metaphors or analogies is that, if you're looking for a financial planner and that person has a lot of wealth and you're poor, and you go to them and they say, okay, the only way I can really help you and understand you is to lose all my money, to become as poor as you, and now I can help you become better at your finances. You have a sickness, you go to its doctor who's extraordinarily healthy. This person, he or she, is in health and says to you, the only way that I can help you and understand you and deal with your sickness is for me to get the same sickness. And we're in that hole together. No, it doesn't have to work like that. Like, we can be in extraordinary happiness even while somebody else is unhappy, and not be coming across as dismissive or the word I'm not finding, and unsympathetic and such. So yes, so thank you, Lydia. I think the best gift we can give to our children is to be exemplars of happiness and of ownership of our feelings. Right now I don't feel very good, and I know it's on me, and I'm going to go do something about it. So I'm going to go meditate, or I'm going to go for a walk, and hopefully when I come back, I'm in a higher emotional state so that we can have some fun together again. But our knee-jerk response is to find another human to process that difficult emotions with, which has a positive intention. However, that doesn't always work, because that becomes a new habit, right? When I first got into coaching, I thought coaching was for me because I was one of those people that everyone would call when they were in distress. But I wouldn't hear from them when they weren't in distress, when things were fine. I wouldn't hear from them, right? So it was like I was the go-to. But I trained them to be that way. Go to Richard when you're unhappy, because he'll really get unhappy with you. And that's the game. I'd stop playing that game, right? I'm a better version of myself if I'm happy, and we all are. So thank you. And happy birthday.
Yes, indeed. And she actually replied. So she said, yes, great metaphor with being wealthy. I saw many of my friends take my advice to just appreciate everyone in their life for a while, and they miraculously met their spouses a short time after. So sounds like somebody should branch out and start either a partner agency or wedding planner business or a relationship coaching business on top of whatever else you're doing.
Well, there's a lady, I can only remember her first name, who wrote 2 books on appreciation. There's been a lot of research, thanks to the HeartMath Institute, on how true appreciating has a positive impact on our health, our well-being, our physiology, and our neurological system. And so she was researching appreciation, and then she wrote a follow-up book. And the follow-up book has a title that, when I would often express the title to the book in a group of students, they would laugh as if it's funny, right? And the title of the book is Your Husband is Wonderful. And she got a group of 8 women together who were complaining about their husband's behavior, and she had them do over 10 weeks appreciation exercises. And they started to believe that the husband changed miraculously. But no, it's not a miracle. It is a miracle, but it's not, if you know what I mean. Like, it just... I don't need to coach both people at the same time to improve a relationship. If one person is intending to raise their emotional state and how they view the other person has to follow, right? You cannot nag someone to be more loving, can you? I mean, if anyone's successful, I would love to hear that, right? You cannot criticize someone into being a better person. But everyone responds well to being looked at through the eyes of love and appreciation, and the best version of themselves emerges. That's a great thing to remember. So yeah, thank you, Lydia. Appreciation is understated in terms of its impact as a method of enhancing the quality of our relationships.
Yeah. That is a huge mindset shift, I think, for a lot of people. No, that nagging doesn't work. It might get the dishes clean, but it doesn't really fuel positive long-term behavior change, does it?
Well, you said it so beautifully right there, right? Nagging can work short-term. It can. And but my goodness, is that the way you want it to be? Because if you nag someone and they successfully respond, then you're in a cycle with them. Then you have to do the nagging every day, right? That was basically what the first managers were, right? Reminding people of all the consequences and the bad things that will happen if you don't fulfill your duties in this job. I mean, that's how it was in the factory days. And I know firsthand because I worked in a factory in Montreal, and that's what management was: remind people. on a daily basis of if they don't do the work correctly, there's a consequence. Usually the consequence is being yelled at, which is an emotional consequence, meaning the way it's responded is my survival is at stake while I'm being yelled at. So people work to move away from the pain or the pain that's coming if they don't do the work right. But that's not going to be a happy relationship. So so nagging can be successful, right? There like recently my husband and I wanted to get a new dishwasher replaced, and I have to say the only thing that got that company into action was a bit of using the energy of anger, and then they listened. Some people are so trained that way. Not ideal, but it worked, you know. So I'm not dismissing the negative emotions even in some certain context, but certainly I don't want to be nagging the people that I love and want to have close to me. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see where to go next. So we have Nicholas Gron watching.
Oh, Nick
So he
from
says,
Toronto.
okay, yeah. So he says, "Hey Richard, long time no see." So yes, just catching up there. And then Akshay is asking a question around like a certain scenario. Let's see what the relationship coach can do here. So when a friend stops picking up the call and you don't know why, there's a little anxiety in me to ask that person. But without making that connection, you aren't able to ask. So how to handle myself around that?
Did I hear you say that when they're not picking up the call, like when they're being phone? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
Yeah.
calling another person, the other person doesn't pick up. Akshay doesn't know why, and he's hesitant to ask. I'm understanding hesitant to ask the other person, but also hesitant to ask himself why that might be.
Well, once again, going back to what I said earlier, like the anxiety is an indication of something, and it always goes back to a desire or wanting, right? So I wouldn't do any action while there's anxiety. Wait until you feel at least neutral or at peace again, and are inspired to reach out to that person. And at Erickson, we have this wonderful premise that behind every behavior, including an emotion, because it's a habit, it's a positive intention. And so beginning to question oneself, so what is this anxiety wanting for me that's actually positive? And repeating that question until you actually end up in the positive place, an actual felt state of it, and then you can begin to ask yourself what is the best action to take. If you want a quicker way to deal with it, because that can take a little bit of time, there's a wonderful technique from Heart Math, and it's called freeze frame. And it's 4 steps, I believe. And basically, the premise is that when your heart's at rest, there's a stronger neurological connection between your heart as a neurological system and your emotional brain. And you naturally tap into an intuitive, innate wisdom. So the steps are simple. You can go to the Heart Math website and find their techniques. The first step is to just focus your attention on the heart area, the chest area, and then do that for a few minutes. It doesn't take very long, just putting your attention there. And then you begin to breathe into the heart area as if air is coming in and out of your heart a little bit slower and deeper than normal. And that's called heart breathing. So heart focus is number 1, then heart breathing. All their techniques start with those. And then you move into thinking about something or somewhere you live or have been or a person that you easily appreciate. No effort. Right? Holding a newborn baby, your cat, your dog, being in nature, on the beach. And you just keep breathing the feeling of appreciation and ease and peace you have as you remember that moment, or imagine that person in front of you, that child, that cat, that dog, horse, and you're breathing in and out the appreciation. Yes, in and out, riding through your heart area, going a little bit slower and deeper than normal. In and out. This is called heart feeling. So this third step, you did heart focus, heart breathing, and heart feeling. And once you've established a heart feeling of appreciation or peace or ease or love, you can actually turn to the heart and ask a question like, what is the best possible actions I could take in this situation with my friend? What is the best thing I can do next? And you just wait for the answer. An answer that emerges from your heart. And then when you're ready, you can open your eyes. I think some of you went there. I wasn't intending to do that, but it just happened. So that's called freeze frame. So you're freezing. It's like the old VCRs where you can do it on a computer. Pause the situation and then turn all your attention to your heart. If it's really there in your face, you can actually imagine seeing the situation as a video with you in it, which means you're dissociated from it. Pause it. It's on freeze. Just let it be there, or put it to the side and begin to do heart focus, heart breathing, heart feeling, and then asking the question, right? And to me, it's like your heart is this loving, I was going to say parent, grandparent, that person always says the right thing. Your heart is able to do that. As woo-woo as this exercise is, it's all been scientifically validated. It's being taught to CEOs and companies. There's if you're interested in more work on that, go to Heart Math, like mathematics, Heart Math. Just do a Google search. They have a great website. They have a lot of techniques. They provide a lot of free stuff, and it's wonderful. And their mission is to train everyone in the world to be able to tap into their heart intelligence, because it is intelligence, right? All right. Just on a bit, bring up time.
I just love how you couldn't help yourself, or like also I couldn't help myself just from the description of, talking about an exercise, all of a sudden just going into it. Your voice changed, your speed went to a third of what you were speaking at before, and just going there, and I couldn't help it. Like that's the power of what we do in coaching in general, right? Is creating these open loops and creating these irresistible visions and feelings that just take hold, and it's really powerful. And it sounds, like you said, it sounds woo-woo from the outside, but once you've been in a conversation with somebody that knows what they're doing, it just it changes your outlook on what is possible. And it's not about, just visualize yourself being rich, like feel that money in your hand. It's like it's not that, right? It's like it's so hard to find the right tone and to find the right line to communicate really what it is, to not underestimate and undersell the power of what you can create in your own mind for your future, and not selling snake oil. So like sometimes I feel myself kind of having a bit of a hard time with striking that balance in an authentic way. But so Akshay actually came back to us and he said, so I wish him for his well-being every day and stop calling him. That's what my heart is saying. And he says, thank you so much and God bless you.
Nice. Yeah. So as a not a fan of the word rule, but as a guideline, in relationships, it's if you can refrain from taking any action until you're at a feeling place that is at the very least neutral, content, at ease, and allow the inspired action to come, right? And then you might end up saying, and then you might not take any action. You might think that this doesn't require any action. The heart says just let them be, and yes. I mean, this is true. This is true in all the coaching that we do, and all the approaches and all the programs we teach at Erickson. And certainly in the art and science of coaching, the first module is all about shifting from problems to solutions, and it's more than just the solution. The solution that we can see as a vision of some kind, a way of being, or that also taps us into our resources within. And again, that's why the values questions are so useful. Why do I want to have a better relationship with my friend? Why do I want that? What's that going to give me that's valuable? I automatically put my hand right here on the chest again. What's that going to give me that's important? And as I experience that energy, right, what's the best possible action that I can take to serve that, right, to enhance that?
I'm
Very
actually
different than
so
what we've normally do. It'd be like reaching out to the person from a place of stress, saying, "Why aren't you calling me? What's going on with you? Nothing, nothing. Leave me alone." And yeah, that's not the game we want to play. Right?
yeah,
So
that actually leads into I wanted to ask you a little bit more about how you work, because before you said something en passant that I found really interesting is I don't actually have to coach both sides of the relationship, you said. So can it sometimes happen that that you just coach one part of the relationship, or do you sometimes have both of them in, or like does somebody nag the other one to come in there and or to, like how does that work? What's the best way, or and how? I'm asking a ton of questions at the same time, but I'm really curious. And how is that different from normal, from individual coaching? So let us in a little more about how you work as a relationship coach.
yeah, so when I first started doing relationship coaching, I did uh, throw at the net that I would work with couples. However, I got more than 50% of the couples was one partner really wanting to have coaching, believing coaching would be useful, and the other one being dragged, kicking and screaming into the coaching session, or my girlfriend thinks I need coaching, right? They were not customers, as we call it in the Erickson lingo. In order to work effectively with an individual, they need to be enrolled into the idea of developing and be a customer. However, in my own experimentation with relationships in my life, all kinds of relationships, my family relationships, I noticed that if I altered my energetic fields and my feeling state and if I practice appreciation for the other person, that there would be changes, and they're the best version of themselves would show up. So I began to only work with the couple, the person that reached out. I only worked after that decision I made. I would. So I had a contingency that if I'm going to work with a couple, they're both coming to me equally with the desire to work together. The only time that I did that was a new couple who wanted to have um, an extraordinary relationship. So they were already they were in the new, I want to say honeymoon, but they were already there. But they just were inspired by coaching, and they wanted to start a family. And I worked with them in terms of a vision and alignment about how they would parent each other. Not parent each other, how they would be co-parenting a child that they were going to have. So they were not in a complaint situation. But typically now, I've only worked with one partner in a couple, and just because of that reason, they got to be enrolled, both of them. And it works. It works. It does work. There is. I mean, there are ways to work with couples. That's not my preferred way, but that doesn't dismiss working with couples. I think that's possible. We do have a program at Erickson called the Art and Science of Couples Coaching that we hope to roll out online and at some point. And there are a lot of exercises where you work with both individuals together. In my experience, it hasn't been as necessary for changes to happen because of the approach I use. Yeah.
Oh, okay, interesting. May I ask? Well, first of all, Roseanne says it's so nice to be inspired by my previous classmate slash coworker Richard. So Roseanne Peterson, so nice to hear your voice.
Oh my goodness! From way back. Wow. Wow. Yeah.
So just putting that in there. And the other thing that I wanted to ask is, it kind of slipped my mind, but in the meantime, if ambushing you is okay, what might be one success story around that approach? Oh yeah, and that kind of leads me towards maybe illustrating, because in the Art and Science of Coaching in Module 1 we want to work with people on something that's in their control. Right? Like,
Yeah.
I want my husband to stop smoking is kind of a classic of like, maybe not the ideal coaching question, or maybe not the ideal outcome for a session, especially if the husband isn't present. So how can you reconcile that? And maybe there's a story that you can tell of a client where it illustrates how can you work with them on something that where it's involves another person, but the other person isn't present? How does that work?
Yeah. The most dramatic one. Well, first of all, let me address the other thing that you came up with. So yeah, relationship coaching. One of the things that I was drawn to was how challenging relationship coaching can be, because it is about the behavior of another person quite often, and people come in and they sometimes overtly and sometimes indirectly, they're hoping that they're going to get some kind of magic formula where they can go back to their partner, say something in a certain way, or do something in a certain way, and that person's different, right? So they don't have to do anything themselves, but they just, it's just some, as when I would teach classes in China, there were two questions I would get over and over again, and the two questions were, how can I make my husband more charming, which is the word that's translated from romantic, like he was when we started, and how can I make my children do their homework? And so I'd always say, oh yes, there is a way, right? And come close, everybody, right? I'm just going to give you two words here, right? You can't. Right? Right. So it's about letting go of that attention on the behavior of the other person, and then the magic can happen. Now it's a bit tricky, because sometimes then people go, okay, so if I do these techniques, like listing what I think is wonderful about my husband, and then he'll change into the way I like. No. It's about making yourself feel better, regardless of how he's behaving or she's behaving, and then they may change, they may not. But isn't it wonderful that you're at a place of such power, such empowerment, because they can do whatever they do and you still get to feel good about yourself. So that's my invitation. So that's the kind of conversation I'm having with people at the beginning of the relationship coaching. Like, it's going to be a lot of me challenging you on these flawed premises and beliefs you have that are keeping you stuck. And we have to have that agreement, coach-client. I'm really upfront about that. Otherwise, I don't want to coach somebody who doesn't want to examine their beliefs and let them go. And so that's the initial contract, you could say, for the long-term contract. And something else I wanted to say about that. So it was about, So I have this overarching invitation, which is sort of like a Nazareth frame. Wouldn't it be nice to become a person that all those habits that other people have and those behaviors that once triggered you doesn't bother you at all, and you're able to be at ease and at peace no matter what they're doing, right? It's a very interesting way to look at things. I was with my hairstylist, and she was talking about making decisions to be happier because of COVID, and so she's like joining meetups and stuff like that. And I said, well, just suppose that that water that you're drinking, and you drink it, and it has a magical effect on your body, and you wake up tomorrow and you are happiness, even though COVID is still happening. You're in isolation. You have to work these longer hours, but you're in happiness. Would you drink that water? That's the commitment I'm looking for in a coaching, in the relationship, right? If they, no, I want you to coach me to change other people. Sorry, go to Dr. Phil, right? Or something like that. So my most dramatic example was a woman who had a boyfriend who was a drinker, and they didn't live together. I think they did at one point, but they didn't. But he had a key to her apartment, and they were sort of still dating. They were sort of between the realm of officially, like I don't know what the status would have been on Facebook, undecided maybe.
It's complicated.
If there's such a yeah. What's that?
It's complicated is a status.
It's complicated.
Yeah.
Okay, right. So she obviously loved him, but he was a heavy drinker, and he lost his job. That was it. He lost his job. And he was drinking to the wee hours of the morning and sleeping in till 2 in the afternoon, like really late, and wake up and in a foul state and come into her apartment. She worked from home. I think she was an artist. She worked from home, and he would just be awful, and it was a daily thing. And he and she would try so hard not to get triggered, and the more effort to not get triggered, and an inevitable fight, the cycle just continued. So she ended up working on the level of finding things to appreciate about him, and she did it. She did commit to it on a daily basis and visualizing. And wouldn't it be nice if, let's make up a name. I want to be confidential. Joe, found something good to happen. Wouldn't it be nice if? And she practiced it until she felt better. And he stopped coming to the apartment. And then, just like this friend that was on this call here about not picking up the phone, he just wasn't coming to the apartment anymore. And there was the occasional text, but he was very vague and quiet. But she just kept practicing, right? It's just like, I wished the best for him. And she did a bunch of techniques and methods about that and made it a practice. And then 2 weeks later, I remember it was 2 weeks, and she's telling me, he actually asked if he could come in. Even though they had an arrangement, he could just walk in. And he told her, I have great news. My parents are going to use this money that they have to help me go back to school and some helping profession, maybe massage or something. And he was beaming, and she was like, oh my goodness, and bright and lovely. And over the months, he got his act back together. And so that was a tipping point example because it was so dramatic. For me, and I really began to believe the power of looking at someone through the eyes of love and their very best, telling that new story, because there has to be another element in play. I've discovered that boyfriend of hers really admired my client, looked up to him. Up to her, I should say, up to her, like she was successful, looked up to her. And how do I explain this? When we have a relationship with someone, we look up to them, we actually put them structurally, I'm speaking from the level of NLP now, structurally higher than us. So if we visualize them before us, they're usually somewhat higher than looking down at us, right? Authority figures. So because he looked up to her, anything she did or said had an impact, more than if somebody was more than if she was somebody he didn't look up to or didn't think was an authority on anything. She had that influence. That's why parents, we have such an influence emotionally on our children, and bosses and leaders, we do. If the people around us are looking up to us, what eyes we look through, if it's eyes of criticism versus the eyes of appreciation, the eyes of love, or the eyes of valuing that person, has a greater impact. And so that was an extraordinary case that I learned a lot from as a coach, and as far as I know, they're doing well. So
yeah. So maybe just to put a disclaimer on that, right? It's not that this was an abusive relationship or anything like that, and it's not about rationalizing the bad behavior of somebody else. It's not like, oh well, he hits me because that's how he expresses his love or something like that. That's not what you're talking about.
Oh, no.
It's not about kind of. Yeah.
Yeah, I would. I mean, following the ICF code of ethics, and if somebody was coming to me with that, then I would have to be authentically honest and ethical and say, I'm not at the skill set to assist you. You need to first make your safety first and foremost, and I would support them on that level before we can do any other work. Not to close the door entirely. No, he was just critical and nasty and dark and pessimistic, and she's trying to be a positive person, and that was the dynamic that was happening, and it was always leading to a fight. But he wasn't verbally abusive. It's a fine line there. He, from what I remember, he was critical and blaming, right, of everybody, including her, right, you people, kind of thing, generalizing. But no, not dangerous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for that.
Got it. Yeah. Hey, since it's Pride Month and we're about to run out of time, I just wanted to kind of check in. Are there any difference?
Oh my goodness.
Are there any difference you've noticed between same-sex couples and heterosexual couples when it comes to, I don't know, the stuff they talk about, or just anything that you might have noticed?
Oh wow. Yeah, that was a really interesting question. Here and there, and one of the things that I used to do, and I know I've read the literature, and a lot of same gay men and women have done, is if something's not working in the relationship, the first place they go is it's because I'm gay. It's the first blame, and that's not true. It's not true. It's just it's a relationship, and everybody has this. But I remember doing this. This is the curse of being gay kind of thing. That's why I'm not able to find the one, or it's that. I think also for in the world of same-sex dating for men and men, I don't know about, I can't say for women and women, there's that confusion of, if you meet somebody, what's the intent? Is it just for that night, an intimate moment, or is it going to be an ongoing friendship with benefits, or is it actually a relationship? I was talking to somebody about that the other day. It's like, it was really confusing to know where they're coming from. I'm sure it is for females with men. It's hard to know, because they might be lying and saying, yeah, I want a long-term relationship just so that they can get lucky that night. So I don't know.
To be fair, I think that women can probably be jerks too. Like, it's an equal playing field. And that's
Yeah, so I'm answering your question not from a level of research and having looked at it globally. It's a very interesting question. So Canada was the second country in the world to approve same-sex marriage, which I'm so proud to be a part of. I mean, it can bring me to tears. It's so amazing, that affirmation of who we are in the world. Holland, or the Netherlands, was first, and Spain, I think, was third. And but now we have men and men divorcing, and I was like sad about that, because no, like we really wanted to have these marriages, and we're not, and most of us are not getting married for anything but love. That's my naive way of looking at it. Like, we want to be with that person that we love, and of course there are many same-sex couples who are also thinking about having or deciding to have children in it. But I guess my long fumbling answer is, it's more similar than different. That's what I'm saying. It's more the issues, the challenges are more similar than different. But I think that if the homophobia sneaks in, that should be dealt with as a set of flawed premises. And I don't know. Was there something behind your question? Some suspicion?
No, it wasn't. I mean, I read a study actually where it said that like couples that have two men in them have the most sex, like the most frequent sex, and couples that have the couple configuration has the least sex is lesbians. But not kind of reading anything into that or confirming stereotypes or anything. Just curious. But I think I love what comes out of your answer is that people are people, right? And whether it's a gay marriage or it's a hetero marriage, it's people are people, and love is love. And yeah, just because LGBT people or gay people really had to fight for a long time to get married doesn't mean that they should be forced to stay married, right? Just to kind of carry that banner politically. Again, people are people, and kind of relationships between people still are that of normal people. So I was just curious to see if there's anything from your part. But what struck me was your answer in the beginning about vibrating at a certain resonance and kind of attracting that other person despite the odds and despite kind of adverse environment or whatever, what have you in the world. That sounds like something that would be especially applicable to LGBT people, because there are many places that aren't very open to them expressing themselves and to finding a certain type of love and that sort of thing.
And that's unfortunate. Of course it is. And the thing is, and it's not meant to sound dismissive at all, but or privileged, but we can only work with what's been given to us, right? The bed that we are lying in. So let's work with that, because there are always examples of somebody in a situation where it doesn't look like they're going to have the opportunity to meet somebody like in the same sex, but they do. They exist, and just the fact that there's one example means that there's that possibility. Yeah, there's some limitations there for sure, but that doesn't have to mean a life of misery. It's you know. As Eckhart Tolle would say, in answer to a question, yes, even if you put me in jail, I'll find peace. You know, so like and that's not a sentiment that people like to hear all the time, right? Because if there's so many wrongs in the world, and there are people that do wrongs, that's for sure. But like we're left with ourselves in terms of how we feel about things. There's one other thing that I wanted to say, and that is, interestingly, when the topic of relationships has come up with some of my friends who are single, and sometimes I would hear them say, "Oh, well, Richard, I mean, you met the right person." Like it was something that happened magically without any commitment on my part, and I would be like, "Okay, you got to sit down and hear the whole story," right? So that's not true. It's not that I found the right person and now I'm happy. I got happy, and the right person happened. That would be the T-shirt I would wear.
Yeah, also because you were allowing yourself to recognize that it was the right person, no, and to kind of have the courage to say, yes, that is the right person, instead of saying, oh, what if there's an even better person out there and I don't know what.
Well, I mean, we try to fool ourselves, but we all know what it's like to have a day. Thankfully, I haven't had a day like this for a very, very long time, but we wake up, we spill coffee on us, we're late for the bus, and then we start telling the story. I'm going to have a bad day, and things go wrong for me, and I shouldn't have got out of bed. And then, it's a day, one after the other, putting our attention on what could possibly go wrong, rehearsing it unconsciously. The unconscious mind says, aye, sir, this is what you're putting your attention on. Let's give you more of that. So if a stressed, unhappy person goes into a forum where they can meet people, whether it's a club or a bar or a speed dating, with stress and, oh my God, all men are jerks and all men are pigs, or all women just want money, that's what they're going to see. That's the filter that's going to go and play, instead of going in with, right, she's on her way, she's around the corner, she's getting close, I can sense it. I don't know what she looks like exactly, or he looks like, or they look like, or, whatever pronouns would be used appropriate for that person. And just that self-talk, but for the feeling of being that magnet, meeting incredible, remarkable people that are in tune with that. That's to me, that's the difference.
Yeah. So, Richard, as we're kind of approaching the landing here, my
captain.
Two last questions. I'm not going to get on the chair. It's turning. Two questions. One is, how does solution-focused coaching kind of, and I mean this could end up in being a 4-day workshop, I know. So let's keep it short. But how can solution-focused coaching help people kind of potentially get closer to the place that you were describing?
Well, yeah. So if it wasn't for my immersion in solution-focused coaching, all this other stuff probably wouldn't have happened, all these insights that I gained. So the solution-focused coaching, I'm going to repeat something here, right? Again, it's not about focusing on the problem and then trying to solve it. It's about going from the dissatisfaction to what is it that I want? What is it that's inspiring? And getting oneself resourceful. So in the first module of the Art and Science of Coaching, we talk about the Erickson principles. I sort of mentioned a few of them, right? But these are guiding ways of being with someone. It's an attitude. So if I'm coaching you and I believe that you have within you the capacity to have a marvelous relationship, and I sit with you, and even if you don't believe it, but I do, I'm looking at you through the eyes of appreciation. Coaching is love. I hope that doesn't make people squirm in their seats, but coaching is a form of love. You get a quality of a relationship that I don't get with everybody, because it's all about you, the client, right? The attention is on you, and I believe in your capacity, your ability, your strength, your power. It's in you, right? I'm going to ask those wonderful, powerful questions that shift your attention away from the problem, away from the pain, and long enough for something to emerge that feels right, that has that alignment with the heart-brain system. And that's right. I mean, right there in Module 1 in the Art and Science of Coaching, you're getting that as a foundation, as a basis, right? To use what we call coach position, which we believe at Erickson is what the ICF calls, another colleague, just presence, maintains presence as a core competency. We believe coach position is maintaining presence on steroids. It's an exponential way of being with someone that has no judgment, and the mirror has no dust on it. And we are there to reflect their capacity, their possibilities, their greatness. And if a coach is only doing that, magic can happen. It's really great to check in with yourself as the coach and notice if you have any doubts about that, because if you do, that shows up somehow. But if it's a pure, I don't know how. This is what I used to do when I started my coaching sessions. I also do when I facilitate. I don't know how. It's not up to me. I'm not micromanaging the universe here. The universe is very powerful. My deeper knowledge system is very powerful. This client, this class is going to get a result at the end of it. Whatever is best for them. And holding that frame, I had a facilitator who used to have this phrase, holding the space, right? Holding the space is solution focused. And as the coach, we are putting part of our attention on where the client is going or developing into. I'm not just talking during those 30 minutes, 45 minutes, but beyond that, beyond even the end of the coaching relationship out there in the world, 5, 10, 15, 20 years. It's very powerful to have someone put that attention on you. So it's like a blessing. I've been researching blessings because I believe there's a neurological experience that happens. If we put someone in an MRI scan and they receive what I call a blessing, which is somebody we trust and believe saying the right thing in the right way with the right tone and having a cascading effect on our neurological system, which allows for our deepest resources to emerge. So a lot of us have had the experience of having somebody in our life, usually a grandparent, because they don't have that monetary and emotional investment in the children like the parents do. They don't nervously worry about it. They're like at ease and they're all about the good stuff. And they're the ones who look at the child and they say, "You're magical. Oh, great things are in store for you. Don't tell anybody, but I see it. As your grandmother, I see it." And the child just goes, "Yeah, that's right. That's exactly true." Right? No question, no resistance, no mismatching, and there's that emotional, vibrational. I don't know what it is. I hope to have an MRI in my basement and put someone in there and bless them and see what happens. Because I think there's something there. Why do we seek out celebrities and want their autograph? It's not really, to me, about the autograph. It's about that moment, the eye contact. That person who we look up to, who we believe has greatness, is acknowledging our existence, and it's something, right? So as coaches, using the Erickson principles, using coach position, the power of questioning, the as-if frames, which are imaginary questions for people who don't know, like what-if type questions. All of that works very powerfully together with clients. So if you apply that to the relationship aspect as well, as long as you get a contract or an outcome that is within the client's control, then great stuff can happen. But it can be challenging to take the client shift of attention away from wanting their husband to stop smoking to having a real examination of what that means for them and what they would rather have and how that would feel and how would they show up in that whole higher being level of coaching. Yeah, right. Because what does this client want by having her husband stop smoking? Another sort of provocative question is your husband acting in a way he ought not to, and for that reason you can't feel good about yourself? Is that how you want to be? Is that person behaving in a way you believe they shouldn't, and because of that you're disallowing joy? I mean, I have a little tone of sarcasm in there, but that's a provocative question. Wait, no, I don't, because we check in with our identity. Do I really want to be a person who somebody else has my emotions in their hands? Do we really want that? I mean, that's a loaded question. It's not really a coaching one, but I don't. again, having said what I said earlier in this session, I value freedom so deeply, I think we all do as humans, that I want to declare that I'm a person, that nobody's in charge of my emotional state. I get to be in charge, right? I wouldn't want anyone to be in charge of my happiness, and I wouldn't want to be in charge of anyone else's happiness either, because we're designed for something more than that. Okay, that's my all the way around the cosmos answer to that wonderful question you asked me that I don't even remember anymore, which makes you a great coach.
So that goes a lot more into module 3 already, right? That's no longer basic module 1 kind of thing. But if we're starting to mismatch and starting to ask these kind of questions, to needle them a little bit, in order to,
the challenging,
yeah,
that's in module.
in order to
That's
jump,
advanced.
in order to jumpstart the values and that sort of thing. Yeah, wonderful stuff. All right, so last question then. Aika says, hello from Istanbul. On my way for IACTP at the moment. And she's thinking about, she sees becoming an expert in relationship coaching and kind of making that her focus. What would you recommend to somebody who is curious about, who has a solid foundation in coaching, maybe has done the art and science of coaching, where to go from there in order to really dive into relationship coaching?
Oh, that's a good question. If you want to work on the level that I've been describing here, that I love personally and professionally as a coach, I would recommend that there's a woman you might have heard of, Byron Katie. She's got a number of books. Her first one is called Loving What Is, which is really what I've been talking about. Her second book is called I Need Your Love, Is That True? So she has a whole book on relationship topics that examine the false, flawed premises and beliefs that we don't typically scrutinize and put up against reality, right? So I found that book extremely valuable. If you're okay with going into a much more spiritual and law of attraction direction, then all my business cards just fell. Yeah. But I'm in a happy state. This one,
It's upside down.
It's upside down. Getting into the vortex. No, the vortex. It's called the vortex. It goes through 15 or 16 flawed premises that stop people from having great relationships, and it's very inspiring book. I found that very useful. It's called the Vortex. It's not scientific. It's on the level of, I mean, you would find this in a New Age store. So if that's your thing. I mentioned Heart Math. That's another good resource. I think that's useful because people are. And there's another one. So I have 4 now. So what did I say? So the Vortex, Byron Katie's work, and Heart Math. Mm-hmm. The fourth one is a book from a Toronto neuroscientist. And now I'm going to give you the latest scientific research perspective, which she's works at the University of Toronto. I think she's a neuroscientist, and I can't remember her name, unfortunately, but her book is called How Emotions Are Made, and it is a radical rethink of emotions. And she also has a TED Talk.
Yes, it's on the tip of my tongue. I'm just going to go into my Kindle app because I own that book. I don't know the name either. Lisa Feldman Barrett.
Lisa Feldman Barrett, yes. So she's also got a TED Talk, and the basic research that she out of that book is that we assume that our emotions are universal, and they're not. There are cultures that don't even have words for anger, but they experience something physiological and energetic through the system. So she's basically providing a lot of robust research that backs up what Erickson has been teaching and training for 30 years about the construction of emotions are very personal. And when you say you're angry and someone else says they're angry, what they're feeling, actually feeling physiologically, what they're sensing can be quite different. We train our children to give a name to a physiological energetic state, and then that it's linked there. But there are cultures that have words for emotions that we don't have. And there's an invitation in the book to create emotions and give them new words. It's kind of a fun exercise. So I find that very useful. I'm sure there are others, but I wish I had thought about this question before I started today, because I would have been more prepared for the answer. So I don't know if there's a place, if I think of other resources that I can post it.
Yep, absolutely. You just let me know and I'll post it under the stream, and we can let people know that way. Because a lot of people also watch not live, but they watch the recording. So by that time, it'll be useful for them to see it under there.
Okay, good.
Well, Richard, I want to thank you so much for showing up, for the state of being that you brought to the stream, for all the different strands, all the different interests that you bring here. I think that was very much exemplified by the recommendations that you gave. You draw from a whole variety of sources, right? From the kind of the newest neuroscience, from things that feel a little more spiritual, and things that can sound a little woo-woo, but that kind of feels super, super powerful if you're open to them. So I think it's a wonderful combination, and I certainly learned a lot, and I hope that other people are inspired as well to also, bring their own personality to their coaching, right? And to not let themselves be defined by a label. Oh, I'm a relationship coach. That means I have two people on the couch. Like, no, if I want to work with one person, I think that works. And I have the kind of the proof to back it up. I can just work with one of the people in the relationship. So why wouldn't I make that work? So very, very inspiring. Thank you so much for that, Richard.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right. Anything that we didn't say? Anything that you want people to take away in one sentence from this talk?
Oh boy.
Or just underlining something that we did say. Totally.
Well,
fine.
you just kind of said it. So, relationship coaching is a niche of solution-focused coaching. And it's an application of solution-focused coaching with a lot more emphasis on the client's own internal state, as opposed to, assisting them to come up with ways to change the other person's behavior. At least that's my way of looking at it. So that's how I would summarize that. And fundamentally, it's another variant of solution-focused coaching. So you are equipped with everything to be a relationship coach with the art and science of coaching.
You are equipped with everything you need. That sounds familiar. Wonderful. Yes. Thank you so much, Richard. So everybody, write down, what are you taking away from the stream? We're always curious on what you have created for yourself by listening. And we'll see you in 2 weeks on the next episode of Erickson Live. Thank you so much, everybody. Take care.